That's right.
Again, we've had two developers present some conceptual development. Has anyone else come forward that has seen interest and?
Well, we have ongoing discussions with Newmarket Mills, and part of their plan, it was actually a two-phase plan. And the second phase involves the development of commercial space in the back of the lot, in back of the library. And recently, we've had some discussions with Eric Chimberg about moving forward with a retail development at that location. We're talking fairly small, 9,000 square feet. Could be a small grocery store. And he's also talking with a prospective tenant who's interested in renovating the Riverdale property for some kind of a restaurant. I don't know the specific details, but they are moving forward with some development proposals within that area. And I think it's really important to highlight that the purpose of this, in addition to allowing mixed-use development and commercial expansion and so forth, is to really utilize infill development within the downtown. And, you know, we have 4 or 5 tracts of land that could conceivably be developed. And it's really important, I think, to look at, we have projected housing growth in the town, and the question is asked, where is the best location for that growth? Is it in the downtown area, which is close to services, where we have a pedestrian-oriented environment, or out in the, you know, hinterland, so to speak, where we're encouraging kind of sprawling development and leapfrog development? And I think if you look at the master plan, it talks about long-range growth. We're going to have to deal with that growth some way. And I think the planning board's feeling is we want to be in the driver's seat as to where that growth occurs. And the feeling is that it should occur in the more urban, compact area. And the master plan does talk about that. So I just wanted to just highlight those points in response to some of the questions raised. And indeed, that section, the housing section of the master plan, is grossly out of date and really does need to be looked at. Since that section was adopted, we now have a workforce housing law that requires communities to have a certain amount of housing for the workforce. And that goes hand in hand with our economic development activities. And part of the master plan process should be looking at what is our fair share allocation of housing. Certainly Newmarket has its share, but if we, you know, if we're going to have housing growth, where do we want to see it? And I think the answer that the planning board came up with is we want to see it in the inner core area rather than out in the outskirts where it can cause sprawl and, you know, kind of this leapfrog type development. So I know I'm rambling, and I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
And I'm happy to answer any of the questions you may have.
No, it's it. Other questions, Councilors? Yeah, let's.
Well,
Councilor Levy?
I've got a few. Do you want me to just run a couple and then
your turn.
You tell me when to shut up?
Go to 3.
Well, I'm trying to do it right through their case. So I'm just looking at it. On page 93, they're talking about permitted uses. So on number 3, 3 or more greater residential units. What are the design rules for these units? And it's been implied that they're only 1 bedroom, and they're not going to, you know, have children, et cetera, which frankly I think has been sort of overstated tonight. But just as a side note, there's nothing really that prevents an office or a den area from being converted. And one of the reasons I brought that up is because it's very, very difficult to, you know, tell someone who's got an apartment that's 600, 700 square feet that they can't have someone living there with them or a child. So that was my only point of bringing that up. A lot has been brought up tonight just in relation to children. And I'll just go through a couple of the things in the plan and then the master plan, and then I'll let them respond if that's okay. Number 1 was the ZBA is taken out and the planning board is inserted. That was the sort of beginning of that. the fiscal impact takes out analyzing school impacts in particular. So they crossed out analyzing general impacts, assess school impacts in particular. That's literally crossed out. If you look at page 93, number 1. This, I thought, was giving an awful lot of discretion to the planning board, and I don't know why they would take the school impacts right out of there. I personally don't think the school impacts is the first and foremost issue with respect to multifamily, but right there, for all this talk, they're taking that section right out. On number 2,
He's looking at paragraph
if you go to page,
B2,
sorry,
B1.
Can you give us the page?
yeah,
Anything in
93.
your package, page 2 in the document, if we have it by.
Yeah, it says preparation acceptance by the ZBA, they crossed out ZBA Planning Board of a market analysis, and then they basically say they can take, the analysis out at their discretion, which I think has already been brought up. And then they say that, if you read it, it says, which demonstrates the feasibility, which, like I said, is taken out if they want to. Multifamily housing, they take out in a community which already has an overabundance of multifamily housing, is all taken out. And then they talk about the school part, which I read. Then I just basically read the multifamily thing about towns of similar size in Newmarket. They're taking that the portion out about we have an overabundance. If you go to number 4, if we're supposing, and this is sort of the real nexus of some of my frustration with this whole pitch or argument, they're saying they want to increase business, theoretically, in town. And if we're trying to increase business, or this mom and pop concept of, the business is downstairs and the owner is upstairs, which I think is frankly a stretch. What they're really saying is, if you're not going to put a business on the bottom floor, we're going to put 4 units in a building, which is, well, that's, I see you shaking your head. Well, let me just, because part of the zoning, as I understood it from the last meeting, and there may have been some amendment suggestions, but the original that we heard was, if you have a business, you can have up to 6 units in an acre. I think you both corroborated that I was accurate on that when I brought it up last time. And then if you don't have a business on the bottom floor, you could have up to 4 units per acre.
6 units per acre, no more than 6 units per acre, no more than 4 units per building.
Okay, and if there's no business, I remember asking the question.
You can still have
4 units.
multifamily. No, you can have 6 units per acre, no more than 4 units per building.
Okay, well, I'm not talking, okay. So,
You said 4 units per acre.
okay, I apologize.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to say is if it's to promote business, and no one's going to put a business there, and you can put 4 units if there's no business per acre, isn't that accurate? Wasn't that part of it?
Say that question one more time, Councilor.
If you have an acre of land,
Yes.
and you want to put 4 rentals, condos that you want to rent out or whatever, multifamily 4 units, I understood that if there was not a business as part of that building, there could be 4 units for multifamily. Am I not correct?
It would require a special use permit or a conditional use permit, and the planning board would require a fiscal impact statement that would require looking at the school impacts, and it would have to have a net positive impact before the planning board could issue
Okay.
a special use permit under those terms.
Okay. And I don't want to, just bang away, but these are the things that have been brought up to me, and I'm basically having concerns with myself. If you're going to, or if we're going to do something like that, and then the planning board at its own discretion can eliminate the impact study, or the feasibility study, I just find that not making a lot of sense to me. And then, I don't have much more. Those were specifically some of my concerns. And then, with respect to a lot of the discussion tonight about the school and multifamily, et cetera, this is, on page 5, and I'd invite people to read it. It's right in the, I actually had to find it. Phil was nice enough to help me Google it, because I couldn't find it on the town website. On page 5, and this was a master plan for housing, and frankly, well, I'll make my statement after. On the second paragraph or the third paragraph, whatever, second paragraph, third paragraph on page 5, it says, to broaden its tax base, the town must slow residential growth, encourage sensible non-residential growth, and increase the value of its residential tax base. With the possible exception of elderly housing or retired communities, the town should discourage additional multifamily complexes so that the town's mix of housing is more similar to the regional distribution, with about 60% single-family detached units. Single-family units typically will provide more property tax revenues per unit than duplex or multifamily units and demand less in community services. The town needs to encourage housing growth so that the town's mix of housing shifts to a more normal pattern with about 60% of single family. Also on page 5, it talks about the town should consider additional setback requirements and possible density restrictions for future development within the watershed area. And then the last bullet point that I'll mention is it sort of repeats part of what was on the previous page with a little bit more encompassing, covering more ground, which I think has been left out of the conversation tonight. It says, address, and this is a specific bullet point where these are the recommendations of our town master plan that I don't believe anybody on this council was involved with, but I certainly wasn't. It says, address the high number of multifamily units in Newmarket through ordinances and regulations, which we're sort of doing the opposite, that limit additional multifamily development and bring the distribution of housing types back into the regional and state norms. And, when you talk about the state has asked for certain amounts of, multifamily, with all due respect, that's very misleading, because we have more than done our share, Diane, so I think it's really pushing the envelope to make that case. Particular forces should be on the trend toward conversion of older, large, single, and duplex units into multifamily apartments, which increase the density and also increase impacts on town services and parking requirements. And I think that was left out of the discussion tonight. There was a lot about the school. What about water? I mean, we're hearing about the wells right now. We're hearing about, come May, maybe there's going to be some restriction if we don't get a fair amount of rain. We have wastewater. The earliest we can address our water is minimally 2 years, predicated on what was stated at the deliberative session, and that's provided it passes. Wastewater is 4 years minimally, and it may be longer. Police, fire, parking, all those are things that this town has infrastructure issues with respect to paying for these things. And that's, I think, what was left out of a lot of the arguments or concerns tonight. Causing, and it's only another sentence, causing congestion in the village area. Why not proportionately contributing to the tax base is obviously what they're addressing there, is not what they're promoting. This approach should reflect the historic pattern of the downtown area, however, where densely populated areas should and always have been found. This is particularly where the town seeks to encourage the development of a vibrant downtown, which I think we've done. So, my concern in general is really regarding, A, we're taking our master plan, regardless of whether or not we rewrote Chapter 6 on economic development, which I think we're trying to address. We're basically saying we're going to do a 180 from the master plan that is in place right now, which we're obligated on some level by state law to follow. And we're going to completely disregarded. And I can't frankly defend it. And I'm not really against this in general. I don't like the process. I think we should be doing a thorough analysis. They talked about spending a year and a half, and when Council Wright asked about intended consequences, they shifted. When people came out to a meeting and concerned themselves about how far it was going, they shifted. There's other questions that haven't come out and changes that would maybe be made if it was vetted. I think what we have in front of us is a few businesses and developments that will theoretically look better than what we have now, and I think that's positive. And I'm not really averse to a certain amount of densities. It's finding the right number, doing it properly, vetting it properly, and not changing or throwing the baby out with the bathwater to placate 3 developments or 4 developments because they're ready to move, and they've got to have that kind of density. So that's basically my feeling on the subject.
Other councilors? I think you've already spoken once, right? So, personally, I think the downtown is a beautiful spot in town. I think it's great. I don't want to say it's the jewel of the town, because I think there's a lot of great neighborhoods in town, but I frequent the downtown. I'm a fan of the work that's happened there. And the concept of expanding our downtown is one that appeals to me, because I think it's really the place where we can afford development in a healthy manner and without losing the character of the town. I mean, I had a lot of questions around this, and I've done a lot of research around this, especially around the premise that Chapter 5 of the master plan puts forth is that multifamily is drawing excessively on services. I don't know if that was true 11 years ago when that analysis was done. I'd love to hear more from the planning board about analysis that were done during the last 18 months around ascertaining that. But from a school side, it's incredibly clear to me that they put more in than they pull out. There's less than 14%, there's 60% of the housing in this town and less than 14% of the population in school. So they're not drawing on the school heavily. As far as the water goes, I agree that the water and sewer is a concern for the town, but as a water and sewer rate user, the idea of creating development that will spread out the amount of individuals paying water and sewer rates is, especially given the amount of work that we have to do, none of this will happen. If the well does not pass, we're under a moratorium for development, and this can't happen anyway. So this will not be an excessive draw on water unless we actually develop the well that is on the warrant article this year.
Not if we vote this in.
But if we vote this in, as if in a week or 2 weeks, if the moratorium, if we don't pass the well, DS come down with a moratorium and then there's no development at all in town, which is another issue, except to say that this is going right where it would increase the amount of ratepayers in there, residential and business. So I question some of the premises in Chapter 5 from 11 years ago right now. I also think that the demonstration of the types of businesses that would go in there seem to be something that, I honestly came in here tonight saying, well, maybe we just get rid of the, the multifamily, because multifamily is the dirty word of the day, apparently. Yeah, not the day, but the time frame, and just say, okay, can we just strict mixed use? But on some of the ways that I've seen, I mean, this is a great demonstration here that it could be used, seems very much in character with that neighborhood back on the border of New Village over there, as opposed to what it would be if it was mixed use. But I have questions. So I am inclined to support this. 2 questions. There's several places in here where the planning board is taking authority from the ZBA. What is the principle behind shifting authority from the ZBA to the planning board? Someone. Because it looks like a power grab when you, in the outside.
Certainly wasn't intended. I think there's 2 things. The zoning board is governed by state law and also by case law. And before the zoning board can grant a variance, for example, there's a very strict and rigid legal test that has to be met. And if you've come to a few of our zoning board meetings and watched the deliberations, you can see the type of legal arguments that they get involved with in trying to balance the rights of the applicant versus the general public interest. It's very difficult to prove the criteria for a variance or for a special exception. So, and the zoning board have come forward and said, gee, we've had some great projects that have been presented, but our hands are tied. We just cannot approve them given the strict nature of the zoning law that we have to abide by. The second piece of it is, we've heard from our Economic Development Committee, not your group, Gary, but Mr. Levy, but the group before that, we really need to streamline our development process so that a developer such as these gentlemen who are coming in and want to do something can go to one entity, i.e. the planning board or the zoning board for that matter, and get their necessary approvals so that they can move forward with their projects. In the development game, time is money. And if you can streamline the process and make it easier and simpler, then projects such as these can be facilitated in a reasonable time. I think part of the logic behind this is that the planning board, which really sits in the position of, reviewing designs and making those judgment calls whether or not a design is appropriate for a neighborhood, that they should be the ones making these kinds of decisions, because we're really talking about design decisions, and that's really within the purview of the planning board. And it's perfectly legitimate for a planning board to issue special exceptions the way the state law is set up versus the zoning board of adjustment. It just puts it into the hands of a different town entity. So I think the answer is that we're trying to streamline the process and make it easier and more convenient so we can facilitate some quality development. Does that answer your question?
That answers my question.
Okay.
My last question right now, and I'll let other people talk. I've been reading a lot of George Orwell, so I'm going to be incredibly blunt on this one, just because I never liked political speak, and I really don't like it. So forgive my bluntness on this. There's a trust deficit in this town right now, and there's a deficit of individuals assuming that over 18 months due diligence was done, or that, and I'm not pinpointing this on anyone. I'm just saying there's a trust deficit across the town, that people, we're doubting Thomases right now. And there is some school of thought out there that this is being done for a specific developer or a specific development. So I'm just going to ask it. I hate that I'm asking it, but I think it just needs to be asked on television. Is this being done for any particular person or group of individuals? Is this designed to benefit specific individuals, or if not, what?
Do you want to answer that? Sure.
I just want this out in the air.
We have developers coming in day after day after day, testing the waters for their projects. Even during the lowest part of our depression that we went through, we still had people that had projects that were interested, and they were just trying to figure out the best way. On a regular basis, we have developers coming in, so it's not unusual that somebody will come forward with a plan such as Mr. Decker or Mr. Cheney and say, this is what I'd like to do, can it be done? As far as, a specific developer coming in and saying, I need to have this zoning change or else, my project's not going to go through, and demanding it, I didn't observe any type of direct involvement from the development. I know they're interested because they stand to benefit, certainly, and they're closely watching our process. Some of them have been very patient because we said, look, we are working on this, and why don't you wait and see, before you go forward with the zoning board application, wait and see how this whole process is vetted out. So I can't say there's a specific developer that's being appeased or being catered to, if you will, as a result of this process, no. But there are developers who are very interested, and that's good because we need to have that kind of development activity to move things forward in town.
All right, thank you.
Motion to stay open later.
There's a motion to stay open past, or stay open, Jesus, stay in session past that in a second. Discussion. Mr. Minister, the vote.
Council Wright.
Aye.
Council Levy.
Yeah.
Council LaBranch.
Aye.
Counselor Zink?
Aye.
Counselor Carmichael? Counselor Bentley?
Aye.
Counselor Nazaro?
Aye, motion passes 7-0. Counselor Zink.
There's so much to say, I don't know where to start, but I'll try to be brief. What was that? First of all, out of self-admission, I'm a developer, and I do development in Cambridge. And I can tell you that the attitude of the community in which we do development is one that is, Cambridge and Somerville, Brookline is extremely inviting by the communities. They want us there for revenue. Well, I don't know what their reasons are, but they do. They behave that way. And I don't think, if I were a developer in Newmarket and was watching over this process, that I'd be very much interested in letting the politics of the town play itself out for me to do my development. That's just a business guy's perspective. I'd go someplace where the definitions were clear. Even I'd go somewhere where at least the definitions were clear, even if they weren't inviting. So I wouldn't want to get involved in this. Secondly, the zoning board, the planning board, the council rep to the planning board, the Newmarket Business Association have all recommended the zoning change to us. And I think for us to, somebody's talked about due diligence. I think that's entirely appropriate. I think that one of the most amazing things that I learned tonight, I'm not sure it's true or not, but is the fact that, it may be the fact that multifamily homes are not a drain on our town. That's new to me. I would have always assumed that it was. And I think facts like, was it Senator Moynihan said, everybody's entitled to their point of view, but they're not entitled to their own facts. And so that's either a fact or it isn't. And I don't think us sitting here debating whether that's a fact or not is appropriate. We got to find out whether it's true or not. I mean, it ain't that difficult. So where does that lead me? That leads me to, one other thing I'd like to say, two more. One is I've heard tonight, or during many of the presentations, that some people think we ought to wait until we have this economic development study done. Well, let me tell you something, folks. This council voted not to fund it. We haven't got any money in the economic development. So the council, by its own vote, wasn't even willing to spend any money on this. And we had great lengthy discussions about it. So to think that that is our answer, we don't have it funded. We haven't even sent out an RFP for consulting services. I mean, so if we're waiting for that, I think that is a huge mistake. As a point of mediation for developers, I would like to see the council, and it doesn't have to be done this week or next month, but I'd like to see the council make a statement to the community and to potential developments. We're going to have an answer for you within 90 days. Or, I don't know what the time period is, but just simply to hang it out there for a developer to watch our political macerations occur, I don't think is, and I'm not even worried about being fair to the developers. I'm worried about this town getting off our butt and starting to make some decisions, and not postpone everything we do until we have another study, or we have another meeting, or we have this. I think something like this is too important to not to at least say to developers of this world, we understand your concerns, we need a little bit more time to study it. I don't know how long that is, but you know something, we'll be back to you in 60 days or whatever it is with an answer. So I think that's kind of in the middle of where a lot of people are talking. No, we're not, maybe we shouldn't be making the decision in the next, even with this council. But on the other hand, to push this off into the hinterlands, I don't think is fair to, most importantly, to the town. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Councilor Branch.
Want to weigh in on this. Couple of things that I'm walking away with this evening is, a couple of thoughts that I've had is, I take serious what I do as a counselor, and I'm sure the other 6 of us also do that. We take it serious. I also respect that planning board members take their position serious. And I have a situation where me personally, I'm not a planning board member. I don't follow everything to the letter. They know what's out there, what needs to be done, what has to be worked on. They've spent a fair amount of time. So once again, and I think Councilor Zink alluded to it just now, we have people that we put in place to do things, to direct the town in a certain way, guide the town in a certain way, and then they give us an idea, and we say, well, no, we don't like it. We're not going to do it that way. We're going to get somebody else to come in and give us another opinion. So, I just wanted to say that because I've had that feeling for a long time. We hire people, we talk to people, we get ideas, we get suggestions, and then we just sit on our thumbs. I also appreciate the idea that, in this particular area, we are going to have additional users on the water system and on the sewer system, wastewater system, which we have no choice but to fix one way or another. We have to fix that. And I know, with the water situation, Sean's told us, it's not going to cost us, or it's not going to cost the users any additional money if the Macintosh well goes online. It's really, the money's there. But the wastewater scares me. There's people that are going to have substantial increases on their quarterly bill. So, I am looking at that as a positive. Got to read my writing. And I also hear, and I've heard since before I ran for council, that we need to have a process that is inviting and streamlining, as it was mentioned, the discussion about taking the zoning board out of the mix. Well, you are to some extent, but really all you're doing is just giving that person the opportunity to go to one board, get their charge on what they need to do to come back and have a project that potentially could get approved. And anything that we can do to streamline it, and by streamlining it, I'm not saying we're going to just say, yeah, okay, rubber stamp it. No, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is they know where they've got to go. They don't have to go through the waters of the zoning board, then go to the planning board, and, they've got the process. So, we can sit on this and we can take 18 months to decide as a council, or we can move on it when the time is right. But, you can't wait, and I agree with Councilor Zink, I don't think you can wait until you've had your Economic Development Committee come back with a different idea. Because chances are, the next council's not going to listen to them either. So, that's just the way I want to weigh in on it.
Other councilors? I know, Councilor Brennan, you want to talk a second time. Councilor Carmichael, you haven't spoken yet. Do you have
As I gave you about a month ago, I'm gone on the next meeting. I'm not here on the 6th. So I'd like to see it pushed off until the end of March. Our meeting then, 20th or the 4th of...
We will ensure that there's a full council, at least as long as I'm chair, which is not much longer, is ensure there's a full council when there's, should there be a vote. Now, we've had ulterior means of doing that, and the charter, I think, accounts for people calling in for it, but we'll see where we are at that point. Do you have anything else to say about the topic at hand?
I'd like to say something, Phil.
Vice Chair, then.
Okay, a couple quick things. I have no reason to believe Mr. Cheney. Anything he said is nothing but the truth. Certainly, if Penny Boderman was involved, I'm sure the numbers are the numbers. That was need info, and that's what I'm talking about. Get more info. He asked if a lot of people think of Cherry Hill, some of the places I've been used as examples were Leda Lane, and down the old Sliding Rock apartments. But I had written it down earlier and didn't say it, and Council Levy said it reminded me. One of the questions was specifically to Leda Lane, so maybe some of these don't tax the schools, but I was asked, and I didn't get a chance to talk to the chief today, and I'm sure he had much more important things to do, about the tax on the police, because a person rattled off some facts to me of how often the police go up to some of those units compared to some other units. So there's other things that it taxes besides just the school. Yeah, I said I'd like to see a study. I also was the first to say I didn't know how long it would take or what it would cost. But more than anything, what I said, if it's good now, if it's good in 1 week, if it's good today, if it's good in 2 weeks, it'll be good in 3 or 4 weeks or a month. And should we lose someone's put some time and effort into this, and they're in it to make profit. And I don't think saying wait a couple weeks to get more info would scare them away. If it does, then, I'm wrong. But to say or suggest that there's political things going on from my part, whether it's talking about the dam or talking about the school, I can honestly say every decision I made I thought was best for the town. I could look in the mirror and say that when I'm done my 4 years. And I am saying let's get some more facts, because a lot of people are coming to me. Apparently a lot of people of those are going to Council Levy, and apparently some went to some of the audience. Maybe the other 5 of you, other people going to them, but I'm being told overwhelmingly, let's get more info. It took 18 months to get it. It shouldn't take 18 days for us to learn everything and be experts on it. I'm far from an expert. I want to know more about it. I'm trying to learn more about it every day. I'm finding out more every day. I think the charter, unfortunately, it's old, but it's still, we can't not follow our town charter because it's old and not amended. Sorry. We can't not follow our town charter as councilors and say, well, it's old, it hasn't been amended. This is still our document for our master plan. Shame on us if we didn't update it since August of 2001. But what we're asking to do totally contradicts this. And if we did that in a lot of other areas, I think we'd be hearing about it. So I'm saying, let's take a deep breath, let's get some info, let's find some numbers, and I don't know what the rush is. If it's good, it's good. It's going to be good in 2 weeks, it's going to be good in a month. I absolutely understand the point about a study taking too long. I guess that's my fantasy land. It would be great to have a study and have someone expert shed some light on it, and not a person with no horse in the race, but that's it.
Councilor Wright.
I've heard some comments, people saying that it's a power grab from the zoning board to the planning board. And let me just say this, that there are some communities out there, and I believe there's one in Texas, where it's called one-stop shopping. If you're a developer, you can go there, and they have the complete authority to approve everything. And there's one example, a developer wanted to put up a 50,000 square foot commercial building. He submitted his plans. The day he submitted his plans, 90 days later, he broke ground. But the town had their act together, the developer act together. I'm just saying, as a developer, the last thing you want to do is bring your lawyer in tow and sit on the zoning, before the zoning board looking for information, and then having to go back and go back and go back. That adds up over the long run. And a developer wants to feel like the town wants them. And I think it can be done responsibly. The big thing here is, if we can attract growth, responsible growth, I think it's a good thing. And I think if developers are going to find out, you know what, there are a lot of towns they can build in. But if they know that they're going to be able to go for the planning board and have everything one-stop shopping and done responsibly, we're going to get more developers to look at Newmarket. And I don't know if any other towns, maybe Diane can, that have the same situation that we're trying to propose here. Are there any out there within this vicinity of, this?
I'm not familiar with
Yeah.
it. Dover,
Yeah.
Mr. O'Connell has some experience.
Yeah.
Dover's a good example.
Right.
I think Dover's a good example. They went to form-based coding a couple of years back, which means that they can look at doing anything in any district, but they're doing it responsibly. And they have a developer's package, and in fact, I think I have a copy. I'll email it to everybody. It's kind of a one-stop shopping, but doesn't mean the developers don't have to go to the different boards, but they get a packet that says this is what you need to do to move forward in the town, and they know exactly what they need to do. They put together this stuff and they put it in front of the town, and then the town deals with it through the boards that are appropriate. It's a good example.
Just a couple quick things. I'm not suggesting we don't implement parts of this zoning at all. I do very much agree with what Al said with respect to getting back to people within a reasonable time and dealing with this issue, however it's going to be dealt with. I own a business. I have had to go before zoning boards and have been shut out. I have gone before the planning board and been shut out. It is extremely frustrating, and I sympathize and empathize, and anybody that doesn't really think of me as a business guy in general, I think, is not, does not know me. I'm pretty focused on my business and business in general. In the same vein, I don't think it's fair to say that Newmarket is not a reasonable town. When they had a charrette or a conversation that Val was nice enough to have with the planning board in this chamber with respect to the golf course, when they brought that proposal several months ago that we all met here a couple times. I had spoken to Peter Laughlin, who's one of the most respected attorneys around, and I asked him about our zoning. And I said, are we, not fair to people? I mean, is our zoning too, because, I heard a lot of the same things Diane heard, that, Newmarket doesn't want to work with anybody and we don't let people do things. And Peter said there isn't a town that he knows of that is more reasonable or lenient with their zoning than Newmarket. I think if you compare us to Durham and other towns, you'll see that we are extremely flexible in general. I'm not talking about every dot and tittle, but I'm talking in general. As far as comparing us to form-based zoning, et cetera, with Dover, I don't know Dover's multifamily percentage, but I would be willing to assume that it's not as high as ours. I think Newmarket has one of the highest multifamily or multi-residential towns in the entire area. We approach what a city has, and we're not a city. So, I totally agree with Al. I don't think this is something, and it's not my intention to kill this. It's not my intention to jerk this around for 6 months or a year and have it die on the vine. I think if there's viable projects that people are looking to promote, I'd like to work with those people and see something happen. That's not the same as saying we want to have mom and pops with theoretically 6 per 1 acre zoning. Those are two very different things than working with business and working with people that want to live above their home or their business, with their home, and then say I want to have multiple apartments above it. So they're really, not the same thing. And with regard to the planning board, to Mike's point, I certainly don't want to feel like I'm ignoring what they're saying. I don't know that they used a consultant, or they did, frankly. I think it was a committee that was made up of Val, a person named Justin, and Miss Rosa. I think it was pretty much done internally within the town, so I don't know that they got outside help that we're ignoring, just for whatever it's worth. I don't, think we're ignoring someone's study that that we hired, and then we just ignored them. And the only other last thing I'm going to say, and I'll just leave it at this, if this is wrong, it's fine. But this is not something that this council wrote. This is our master plan. And this master plan says the apartments increase the density and also increase impacts on town services and parking requirements, which we've been talking about ad nauseum, our parking situation, causing congestion in the village while not proportionally contributing to the tax base. So I would suggest, for anybody that thinks that this is nonsensical or inaccurate, to understand why whomever it was that was on the master plan committee wrote these words in our document, because they're in black and white. This isn't something that we concocted.
Any other questions or comments from councilors? Just because I'm the one that questioned what's in Chapter 5, I'm not saying that they wrote an inaccurate document. I'm saying that in 2012, at least as far as the school goes, and I actually agree that we need to get what the police draw is, as well as the fire draw on that, it is inaccurate as far as the school services draw right now. So I'm not saying
I
that.
wasn't talking about the school specifically, that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying, Phil. They were talking about, everybody's thing, and I don't mean to cut you off, but everybody's talking about the school, the school, the school. It's not just the school, it's a lot of things. It's the parking, it's the school. And just one thing, if we implement this, and I don't want to argue ad nauseum, but this is an important debate. You know, if we greenlight this, and a proposal comes in, there's not going to be the state coming down here with a moratorium in 2 weeks saying you can't do it. They will, have a right to build it, and it will further potentially put pressure on the infrastructure that we really are sort of right on the cusp. We're dancing around that right now with our water supply and all the upgrades we need, and we don't even know if this stuff's going to pass at this point, which I'm hoping the heck it does. So I'm not suggesting we throw this thing out. I'm suggesting basically what Al said, which is, I'd like to know if it's really changed. I'd like to do a little homework. It's very hard to do homework when you're getting letters and phone calls and you're trying to read 200 pages of documents that were sent to us today, in addition to 150 pages in our packet today, and all the other things that we're doing in our world, with all due respect. They spent, 180, whatever it was, 180 days on this, or a year and a half, excuse me, and we're dealing with this in 3-4 weeks.
Quick question for, I guess, Diane. Gary brought up parking, and it seems parking's a big issue in this town, but for every residential unit that we put up in this zoning proposal change, you have to have 2 parking spaces per residential unit, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And it was written into the ordinance that 2 parking spaces per unit. So what that means is if a lot is a very tiny, quarter of an acre lot, and there isn't enough room on the lot for parking, then they can't use it for residential use. So a lot of the number of units that are going to be developed as a result of it, the ordinance is driven by whether or not the lots are large enough to support the parking requirements. So that's another constraint in addition to the density requirement.
Thank you.
Real quick, go ahead.
How do they handle on some of these larger lots, like the 1 acre plus lots, if we did this and they had a business, like Mr. Cheney promoted, or mentioned the business that you showed us, 8 or 10,000 square feet, let's say it was some multifamily upstairs or rentals, whatever you want to call it, and they each have to have 2 spots, and then the retail business is doing business, et cetera. How does that all fit in with visitors, people coming, how is that parking, have people looked into, if you have people living there and there's a business that's, I don't know what kind of business, it could be businesses that are open at night and they have people coming in, and where's the parking for them?
The parking requirements in the M2 district are different than the parking requirements in the B1 district. In the B1 district, there's a schedule of parking. You have to have so many parking spaces per so many square feet, depending upon the use. In the M2 district, it allows for, because of the constraints posed by the land patterns and the high density that's already here, parking is determined based upon whatever the standards are for additional spaces that will be needed for the proposed use. So basically, it takes what's there currently as a baseline, and then anything in addition that you're creating, you have to provide the additional parking, with the exception of this residential, because we've put that in there because we had a concern about parking. But there are different ways.
How do you calculate that?
There are standards that are put out by the International Transportation Engineers, ITE. that provide parking requirements based on various types of uses, and it's based on statistical data from different studies that they've done. But that's often used by traffic engineers, I wish our traffic engineer was here, to calculate what the parking requirements will be. But in the M2 district, there's also the opportunity for shared parking. And if somebody is within so many feet of a municipal parking lot, they can meet their parking requirements by a lease agreement with the town or with another entity. And there's also a third option for where parking requirements can be met by contributions to a parking fund, which it was never implemented, but down the road that would provide enough funding that could conceivably be used for a public parking facility.
Okay.
So there's it's handled a little bit differently, but it's not ignored. And I also want to mention that any residential unit that goes in at greater than 3 units has to go to the planning board for a site plan review. And if parking is a concern or traffic is a concern, the planning board has the authority to require a traffic impact study to be completed. And that study would also include measures that would have to be taken to mitigate any impacts. So that might be, providing additional parking or putting in a traffic signal or doing something to make the parking situation less severe.
Thank you.
Councilor Zink.
I'd like to make a request of the council. I don't even know if it's appropriate, but I'm going to make it anyway. I've spent a lot of time trying to understand these issues, and because I know how important it is to the community. And I'm not going to be here to vote on this or to impact it in any way, but I would request of the council that before this council is replaced, that they at the very least indicate to people who are interested in development, people that have points of view about revenues generated from developments, at least we give as a standing council a commitment in terms of when we're going to resolve the issue, so that it doesn't go on for months. And I don't even know how to put that to you folks, other than to say, I think we owe it to the community and we owe it to the developers to stop kicking this can down the road. Take the time we need to do it, and at least come back to them and say, within 60 days, we will make a decision on this.
I understand where you're coming from. I appreciate it. I think maybe we can make a decision on that next meeting and vote on it.
Okay.
You have something, Vice Chair?
Yeah, just want to, I'm glad Councilor Carmichael brought it, Councilor Wright brought it up about, and I think someone else already, the business. I was appalled, as a lot of us were, at some of the stories we heard about the things people had to go through to get, some of them wrote us letters to get their businesses okayed. I've been a huge supporter of business, whether it was a hot dog stand or the Bean putting chairs out, several of us, not just me, several up here that are sitting here now, have said, let's get rid of the red tape. Let's, they want to leave tables out there till November, let them. As long as it's not interfering with public works. This hot dog stand, we're going to make them have a second trash barrel. So don't get lost in the message of that either, that because I'm saying let's take a breath and let's be cautious, so it doesn't mean I'm anti-business. I'm as supportive of business as anyone is that's sitting up here.
The silent one over here is going to talk.
Well, I let it go, well, one, because it's your debate as counselors. And, I mean, I've been taking in what you have all been saying. And I guess for clarification for myself and for staff, it sounds like, one, what council rules are, it's on your agenda for the next meeting. For action, no action, but you'd have to table it for future meeting or lay it over for third meeting.
Could you say that again?
You can either take an action.
Start.
Okay. The ordinance is on for the next meeting. you can either vote on it that evening,
Oh, I got you. Okay.
you can table it for a future, or hold it over for a third meeting, or for third reading. Actually, you can hold it over at forever, which I know you didn't want to hear that, but, but I think in order to address some of these things, I need guidance from the council so we can get you the right information
There you
either for the next meeting or for a future meeting. I mean, I've heard we want to have a study of what?
There you go.
That's my question. Are we studying the impact of this zoning proposal on municipal services? Are we studying the zoning in general on municipal services? If we're going to go that route, I need clarification there. I also don't think it may not be a bad idea, because there is still a lot of questions on this council on this proposal. Even if the study's out of the way, there's still procedural questions I don't think were answered in these sessions we've had. That it probably would be beneficial, I don't know if it's been done, is some sort of, and I'm not saying before the next meeting, but before any action is taken on this, a session with the planning board in the future, or with somebody to say, what is the intent of walking through this? So, because we could all read the same paragraph and come up with 5 different reasons for intent, and then we should, and the other reason why I'm saying that is, there are certain, as you all received my memo today, when you amend this, there is procedures that you must follow after it. So if you amend it, you need to repost a public hearing. It has to be at least 14 days from the date of the original public hearing, plus you have to have 10 days to notice it. So, that goes to the ad infinitum part of it. But I don't think it's a bad idea to sit down, study this, hammer it out if there's any concerns, and then come up with the final decision. Either move on it, don't move on it, but just, I don't disagree with the notion that we need to, as a town, make decisions.
There we go.
If it's yay or nay, make the decision. Don't let it die on the vine. It's time for everybody to do that. But I think it's time, but if this council needs us to come up with some parameters for a study, I need to know what you want us to study.
I agree. Vice Chair Bentley and Councilor Levy, but
I think some of those things were brought up. I think we asked, Councilor Levy asked, either the last meeting or the one before, the difference between the impact fees. We got a whole other thing going on. Impact fees might go away. What would they look like? We asked, worst-case scenario. Point blank, someone asked, what would worst-case scenario look like? We haven't seen that. So some of these questions were asked, and so those are some of the answers I'd like to see. Questions that were asked before.
Councilor Levy.
To address what Steve just brought up, I think if we had a reasonable time frame, whether it's 60 days or 90 days, to get some of the answers to some of the issues that came up. I mean, we've got a housing chapter in our master plan that completely contradicts multiple things that were stated tonight, okay? And maybe things changed in a decade, I don't know. We've heard that Newmarket, is not, it wasn't maybe said this way, but implied that, we're not as flexible as other towns, which I do not believe to be the case. I think we've been extremely flexible with our zoning. I think it would not be inappropriate to get questions from all the counselors here in writing, have them given to you. I've got a bunch that I read tonight, but I didn't annotate them and send them into you to answer. I wanted to go through the process, which is what we're doing. We can send you in the questions. There's multiple people that you could get as an independent party that would not charge us a lot of money. $60 an hour for 6 hours would be less than we wipe out for someone who hasn't paid for trash bags, for crying out loud. And we could get some tangible answers to things, and we could proceed, and I don't have a problem setting a timeline. I don't think anybody up here said, let's, kill this on the vine and make it not do anything forever. That's not the goal. The goal is to be given reasonable time to do some due diligence. There's been a lot of things brought up. and a lot of contradictory things brought up by different parties. So if you want to suffer through listening to this meeting, you could probably make a bunch of questions. One person says this, one person says that. Our own master plan says one thing, other people, so we could provide you questions within a week, 10 days, and you could, find someone, there's multiple people that could work with the town. I think it's a good idea to meet with the planning board and the council, and if Councilor Zink and Councilor Branch, if they were off the council and they wanted to come to those meetings, having been part of this process, I would invite them for input and to get their perspective. And, I just don't, I've had an issue with the process and the timeline. That has been my issue from day one, along with the things that I brought up tonight. So it's that simple.
Go ahead.
And I in no way meant to say that the council should speed up the process. Council should only vote on things when you're comfortable to vote on things. And you have every question answered and you feel comfortable. That's pure simple, number one. I was just trying to get, where do we want to go to get the questions? That was my thing.
I think a week is a reasonable amount of time to get questions to the town administrator. So by next Wednesday, if you have questions on this, please get it to the town administrator. Any other comments on this? Next item on the agenda is new business. Any new business? Councilor LaBranch.
Hearing the discussion this evening with the EDC, I'm concerned that some people seem to think we have budgeted money for consulting, and some people say that we don't. I guess my question would be, and if we could have it maybe on the next agenda, which I'm suggesting, is there money available to have a consultant? And if so, how quickly can we get an RFP out to get a consultant on board? I think those are two critical things. I'm sure the consultant's going to be over, our purchasing policy, so to speak, and I would prefer to see that go out for an RFP.
Budgeted for fiscal year 14 is $2,000.
Okay, but
How much does it cost? Yeah.
what I'm asking as a question, and I hate to phrase it this way, but is there somewhere within this budget that we can
I
find?
will look.
You find a few
Yep.
dollars.
Yeah.
If not, I will look at other places, not only the budget.
Because,
do that.
if we can do that, and if we've got a set amount that we can set aside, if we're not done come July 1st, we encumber the funds so
Exactly.
we can.
Anything else?
Councilor? I guess it's new business. As far as the RFP, I think that's a good idea. Just not to mix apples and oranges, if we want to deal with this in a 60 to 90-day period or whatever, we could probably find someone for reasonably low dollars, maybe within the 2,000 that Steve says he has allocated, to address this zoning issue if that is the at the pleasure of the council, if that is the goal and that is what the council wants to do. As far as Peter Quast was concerned for the economic development, he was going to get forward to the committee. I believe he's going to send it to me as the chair and Steve. A phase, sort of like what John Connery did when we did the Boise Cascade proposal. So, because he didn't really know how far it was going to go, if you recall, Mike, you were on the committee at the time. So he said, this is what it will cost there. Then we evaluated it. Then, it took on different lives of its own. So there were more things to look at. So he gave and he was pretty reasonable at the end. I think it was around 15 grand. But Peter could either phase it in based on how much we need, how much we can do within our, our own community, how much Steve can do, the people that work here. So, those are two different things potentially as far as the consultant. I just don't want to think the economic development, if the council wants to deal with this issue completely independent of the Economic Development Committee, I don't have a problem doing that if that's what you want to do. And that certainly wouldn't be tens of thousands of dollars at all. I don't think Peter was going to be north of 15 all in, and that's if he did a full. By the way, his timeline to do a complete report is between 90 and 120 days, for whatever it's worth. So his reports, just so everybody knows, because people seem to think that when someone works with an economic development, I think, when I spoke to the gentleman in Durham, Todd Selig, excuse me, I think they had theirs in 120 days, their whole economic development thing, something in that timeline. I don't know about all the charrettes and everything, but as far as the report. So that's my issue, just to answer that. On a different note, I just have to thank the Newmarket Fire Department. I had what I thought might have been an electrical fire at the house on Sunday in the middle of a blizzard. At about 6 a.m., I detected a smell of burning smoke or wires, and Councilor Wright was nice enough to stop feeding the chickens and come over to my house and try to sniff out the issue.
I know the cause. It's probably those cheap appliances.
I have.
Is that possible?
I have to. I have to.
Where'd you get those things, huh?
Damn, see?
I have to respond to that. The cooktop was purchased in 1988. It is now officially the 50th item to die within the last 60 days before I ever leave the house. And so I'll probably replace the whole house before I move. But anyway, all kidding aside, the fire department was amazing. And I just have to say this, and I'm not, overly sappy, but the chief took a lot of time. The 4 or 5 gentlemen that came in with their oxygen and all the stuff that they have to run around with gave me a whole new appreciation for being a fireman. They went outside, they checked the smoke and everything that was coming off the boiler, the radon. I mean, these guys were amazing. And then they got called to an emergency over in 108 because there was a bad accident because of the storm, and so they left and the chief stayed behind. So anyway, I just had to thank them very much for the way they handled it, and they, after not being able to diagnose it because it was a very strange issue, they offered to come back, which I didn't take them up on because I didn't want to put them out, but I just have to say they were remarkable, and I think they were at my house within 8 to 10 minutes, in a blizzard, on Sunday morning.
There's a cooktop sale up in Sears.
I'm going to be I'm coming to your house to take your old one.
Vice Chair Bentley.
Just an announcement, the girls' basketball team won an exciting playoff game last night. They're playing again Friday. I'm not sure if it's home or away, not yet, and the boys won in overtime tonight, their last regular season game, and they're ranked number 2 in the state, and they're going to be in the playoffs Tuesday. So go out and support your basketball boys and girls mule teams. And I accidentally just shut this light off of Mr. Carmichael.
Councilor Carmichael.
Yes, well, I got to try to top Council Levy there. I had Officer Jordan last week, and the EMTs came down. My next-door neighbor, an older lady, took a bad fall, and they had to get in, and they get in through the slider using some tools or whatever. They get in and get her out in a stretcher, and she'd been there for hours. So it was, they did a nice job talking to her while they were trying to get in. So I just want to thank them for doing a great job. And they took her to the hospital, and she was in the hospital for about a week.
Excellent, thank you. Any other councilors? Next meeting is March 6th, business meeting. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes.
Oh, can we
adjourn
stay?
at 10:44.